Graduates, families, and friends of Presidio Graduate School, welcome Presidio board members, faculty, staff, students, alumni, and partners. Please be seated. I'm William Shutkin, President and CEO of the Presidio Graduate School, and am delighted to officially open, and we counted them, the 9th commencement exercises of the MBA program in Sustainable Management and the 3rd annual commencement exercises of the MPA program in Sustainable Management. Welcome. Before we begin, let me remind each of you to please turn off your cell phones for the duration of our exercises today. I would like to start by introducing key members of the Presidio community and would ask that you please hold your applause until I've introduced each group. First, our wonderful sample today of Presidio's Board of Directors. Presidio Board, please rise. Next, our terrific faculty. Please rise. And finally, our extremely dedicated staff who are scattered about the room, who've made today possible and have done so really with the special help of many of our graduates. So I want to say a special thanks to the Commencement Committee, comprised of both staff and students, for helping make today's event possible here in the Presidio. So thanks to all of you, and please rise, staff and student Commencement Committee members. Thanks to all of you. Class of 2013, on this, your last day here at Presidio Graduate School, I wanted to share some thoughts with you about our school and our times, which seem particularly appropriate, given that, like many of you graduating today, and in particular, the outstanding C15ers among you, you and I started at the same time here at Presidio, just shy of 2 years ago. And what a 2 years they have been. Arguably, at no other time in the history of our nation have so many traditions, so many industries, so many ideas been called into question, or more to the point, disrupted than now. As George Packer explains in his brilliant new book, The Unwinding, which I commend to each and every one of you, if you were born after 1960, and I think many of us in this room were, you have spent much of your life watching sacred institutions, sacred structures collapsing before you. And let's start appropriately with higher education, which has never seen as much disruption as it has in the last 24 months in over 2 centuries. Forces that have been in motion for years have conspired in just the past 2 years to unsettle centuries-old notions of higher education's purposes and forms. For-profit universities, online degrees, massive open online courses, venture-backed startups, education technology, student loan debt, the weak job market. All of these things have shaken up the system to its core, causing us to question the value of an undergraduate or graduate degree and whether they will help us get ahead, as was always the belief, a central part, a central tenet of the American narrative of success. Hardly a week goes by that you don't see a higher ed story on the front page or editorial page of a newspaper highlighting the latest disruptive event. Just last week, the Boston Globe, based in the metro region with the world's highest concentration of higher ed institutions, asked the question, who shouldn't bother with college? Successful entrepreneurs like PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, based right here in the Presidio National Park, are providing $100,000 grants to promising high school students who elect to forego college to pursue their entrepreneurial visions, like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and most recently, David Karp, the 26-year-old Tumblr founder, now worth $250 million after the $1 billion sale of his company to Yahoo 2 weeks ago. When asked what he'll do with his new fortune, Karp said he'd probably spend some of it on a college degree, now that he can afford it. Meanwhile, business schools are seeing enrollment declines for the first time in memory, and law school applications are at their lowest level in 3 decades when I applied to law school. Meanwhile, the bachelor's degree is now so commonplace that many consider it the new high school diploma, necessary but not sufficient. And then there's student debt. For graduating seniors of college, it now exceeds $26,000, about a 40% increase in just 7 years. Almost 13% of student loan borrowers of all ages owe more than $50,000, and nearly 4% owe more than $100,000. Total student debt, around $1 trillion, surpassed total credit card debt just last year. So what does this all mean for the future of higher ed? Well, no one really knows. But one thing is for sure. The forces of disruption are upon us, and no institutional or individual can be complacent or assume business as usual. The same goes for other sacred cows of American life. Take the age-old idea of property, for example. The rapid rise of the sharing economy made possible by the same forces that are upending higher ed, technology, the Great Recession, debt, is slowly but surely displacing the ownership economy. Indeed, the very American dream, to the tune of about $30 billion in GDP today and growing, up from almost zero 5 years ago. Airbnb, Uber, Relay Rides, B-Cycle, Yurtle, Interface, and hundreds of other companies, many of which you've never heard of, are replacing the vaunted idea of ownership with the humble idea of sharing. Meanwhile, America's working mothers are now the primary breadwinners in a record 40% of households with children, a milestone in the history of the modern family, up from just 11% 50 years ago. Findings by the Pew Research Center highlight the growing role of so-called breadwinner moms, who keep their families afloat financially. While most are headed by single mothers, a growing number of families with married mothers bring in more income than their husbands. Demographers say this change is irreversible. And then there's climate change. For the first time in human history, this past year, this past 12 months, saw atmospheric carbon reach 400 parts per million, up from 385 ppm just 3 years ago. The climate, most scientists agree, is no longer simply changing, it is being transformed by our addiction to fossil fuels. Melting glaciers and ice sheets are telling the story in graphic detail. And finally, let's go from the macro, climactic, to the microbial. This past year has seen the publication of path-breaking research suggesting that bacteria, for over a century, the scourge of Western medicine, and giving rise to an all-powerful pharmaceutical industrial complex, from penicillin to sanitary wipes, are good for us. Bacteria are good for us, making us resilient and healthy. It turns out human health is largely a function of a community of about 100 trillion microbiota living in our bodies, providing essential services like disease resistance. We should not target these bacteria with things like Listerine. Some of you might have even had some today. We should cultivate them like a pesticide-free garden. Talk about whiplash. The medical profession has turned on a dime, from anti to pro-bacteria in the course of a year. Another one of Thomas Kuhn's scientific revolutions. Which brings me to Presidio, to today, to this moment. Presidio itself a disruptive influence some dozen years ago when visionaries and co-founders like Stephen Swig challenged mainstream management education, believing that universities and business schools like Harvard, Wharton, and Stanford needed to be disturbed, if only by a small startup sustainability school named after a park, named after a fortress, the bulwark for so many centuries, standing right here to protect the Bay Area from unwanted intruders, to protect from disruption. Think about it. Presidio is the challenger school, the disruptor school, that introduced the integrated sustainability curriculum and hybrid residency model to business and public administration education, that teaches about disruption, about the shared economy, about the threat of climate change, and even about the benefits of bacteria and working with nature's models, like biomimicry and industrial ecology. And Presidio is one of the few management schools where women outnumber men considerably, where the current and future breadwinners of America go to school. In other words, we not only teach disruption, we practice it too. But we are not immune to disruption itself. Today, unlike a decade ago, we face much more competition. Every graduate school, it seems, has some kind of sustainability program, and our applicants, appropriately, are increasingly cost-conscious, given the student debt burden and the tough job market. We are a small, 12-year deal against institutions that have been around for centuries, have billions of dollars and tens of thousands of alumni. David and Goliath. And that's not all. We're now competing against free online programs. But we have considerable advantages. First, our program model. Hybrid residency, the combination of an on-site and an online program, is, most experts agree, the best 21st century educational model, combining the intimacy of in-person instruction with the efficiency of virtual. And our sustainability curriculum, though still ahead of its time, will be the norm in a matter of decades, I submit, if not sooner. I'm bullish about the mainstreaming of sustainability. It's just a matter of time. And let's not forget what it is we actually teach at Presidio Graduate School, which is sustainable management. Sustainable management is not just about supply chains and finance and strategy. It's about a kind of temperament, an attitude, of leadership. It's about resilience, flexibility, collaboration. And that is our greatest asset, our greatest advantage as not only a school, but a community. Notwithstanding the disruption happening around us, we place great stock in our ability to adapt to change, as well as to steer it. We celebrate the ability to pivot, to adjust in the face of changing circumstances. We recognize the importance of teamwork, solidarity, and trust in pursuit of a shared purpose. And we understand the unpredictability and fragility of all life, the possibility of the black swan, the superstorm, the collapse. It is under these circumstances, adversity, uncertainty, shifting sands, melting glaciers, that our true character is revealed as individuals and as institutions. The next several years will be both exciting and challenging for both Presidio and the planet. But this is what we came here for the challenge, the swimming upstream. What sets us apart from other schools and from other institutions and makes us uniquely well suited for these times is precisely our challenger status, our deep understanding of disruption, and what it takes not only to persevere, but to thrive in the face of uncertainty. And this is perhaps the greatest lesson you leave Presidio with today. Your lives will change over time. Unpredictable things will happen. Things you could not have known about or predicted. And they will be both wonderful and terrible. But they will happen. What matters is how you deal with them, the joy with which you celebrate your successes and those of others, the grace with which you deal with your and others' losses. I'm reminded of the poem Once Only by Denise Levertov. It goes like this. All which, because it was flame and song, and granted us joy, we thought we'd do, be, revisit. Turns out to have been what it was that once, only. Every invitation did not begin a series, a build-up. The marvelous did happen in our lives. Our stories are not drab with its absence. But don't expect to return for more. Whatever more there will be unique as those were unique. Try to acknowledge the next song in its body halo of flames, as utterly present as now or never. I wish each and every one of you marvelous flame and song the days to come, and the strength and purpose to thrive, even when they are absent. Congratulations, Presidio graduates.